You need to hear this if you're a global citizen. The toll of Islamophobia. $8 trillion in wars, 1 million lives lost, 37 million displaced. $100 billion lost annually in job market discrimination, $110 billion on surveillance. Imagine investing that $8 trillion in education or green energy. Islamophobia costs us trillions, tearing apart communities. We can't afford to ignore it any longer. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, influenced by Islamophobia, highlight the significant economic and human costs. These conflicts, initiated after 9/11, have led to trillions of dollars in military expenditures, straining economies and reducing potential investments. According to the Watson Institute at Brown University, the US wars in Afghanistan, Pakistan and Iraq are projected to cost over $8 trillion by 2053. This amount could have been allocated to education, healthcare or infrastructure, fostering development rather than conflict. The financial burden is only part of the story. Millions of lives have been lost or severely impacted by the violence, displacement and trauma resulting from these wars. The human toll underscores the profound consequences of fear and division beyond any monetary measure. The economic impact of Islamophobia isn't limited to war-torn regions. It's a pervasive issue that affects Muslim communities around the world, including in the West. Discrimination in hiring, housing and education creates barriers to opportunity, limiting the potential of individuals and hindering economic growth. Studies have shown that Muslims in Western countries often face higher rates of unemployment and earn lower wages compared to their non-Muslim counterparts, even when controlling for factors like education and experience. This wage gap represents billions of dollars in lost economic output, as talented individuals are denied the chance to contribute fully to society. Beyond the individual level, Islamophobia also carries a broader economic cost. When entire communities are marginalized and excluded, it stifles innovation, entrepreneurship, and social mobility. This creates a vicious cycle of poverty and disadvantage, perpetuating inequality and undermining social cohesion. The global refugee crisis, fueled in part by conflicts linked to Islamophobia, stands as a stark testament to the human toll of this prejudice. Millions of people have been forced to flee their homes, seeking safety and refuge from violence and persecution. The UNHCR estimates that there are over 26 million refugees worldwide, with a significant portion displaced by conflicts in Muslim-majority countries like Syria, Afghanistan and Myanmar. These refugees often face perilous journeys, discrimination and hostility as they seek to rebuild their lives in foreign lands. The cost of this humanitarian crisis is immense, both in terms of human suffering and economic burden. Providing food, shelter and medical care to millions of refugees strains resources and requires significant financial investment from governments and international organizations. Section 5, from mosques to markets. Infrastructure in the crosshairs. The destruction of infrastructure is a tragic hallmark of conflict and discrimination, and Islamophobia has fueled attacks on everything from mosques and schools to businesses and homes. This destruction not only represents a loss of physical assets, but also disrupts lives, displaces communities, and hinders economic recovery. In Myanmar, the Rohingya Muslim minority has faced systematic persecution, including the burning and razing of entire villages. The UN has described the situation as a textbook example of ethnic cleansing, highlighting the devastating impact of hatred and intolerance. In India, mob violence targeting Muslims has resulted in the destruction of businesses, homes, and religious sites, leaving communities terrorized and economically devastated. These attacks, often fueled by rumors and misinformation spread through social media, demonstrate the dangerous nexus between hate speech and real-world violence. Section 6. The surveillance state's heavy-hand policing and profit. The rise of Islamophobia has been accompanied by a disturbing trend toward increased surveillance and profiling of Muslim communities. Governments have poured billions of dollars into security measures, often at the expense of civil liberties and community trust. In the United States, the war on terror ushered in an era of mass surveillance, with Muslim communities disproportionately targeted by law enforcement agencies. Programs like the NYPD's Muslim surveillance program, later ruled unconstitutional, raise serious concerns about racial profiling and religious discrimination. This overreach of security measures not only erodes trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve, but also diverts valuable resources away from addressing more pressing social issues. The billions spent on surveillance technologies could be better invested in programs that promote understanding, build bridges, and address the root causes of extremism. Section 7. Media's megaphone. Amplifying fear, ignoring facts. The media plays a powerful role in shaping public perceptions, and unfortunately, irresponsible reporting has often contributed to the spread of Islamophobia. Sensationalized headlines, biased coverage, and the amplification of extremist voices have fueled fear and prejudice, creating a climate of hostility toward Muslims. Studies have shown that Muslims are often portrayed negatively in the media, reinforcing harmful stereotypes and associating Islam with violence and terrorism. This distorted representation contributes to a climate of fear and suspicion, making it more difficult to challenge prejudice and promote understanding. The media has a responsibility to report fairly and accurately, avoiding generalizations and stereotypes. Journalists have a crucial role to play in challenging prejudice, amplifying diverse voices, and promoting nuanced discussions about Islam and Muslim communities. Section 8. Scars that run deep. The mental health toll. The impact of Islamophobia extends far beyond economic hardship and physical violence. It takes a devastating toll on the mental health and well-being of individuals and communities. The constant fear of discrimination, harassment, and violence creates a climate of anxiety and stress, leading to a range of mental health issues. Studies have shown that Muslims experiencing discrimination are more likely to report symptoms of anxiety, depression, and PTSD. This takes a toll not only on individuals but also on families and communities as the stress of prejudice ripples outward. Addressing the mental health impact of Islamophobia requires a multifaceted approach, including access to culturally sensitive mental health services, community support networks, and efforts to combat discrimination and promote inclusion. Section 9. Beyond dollars and cents, the erosion of trust. The true cost of Islamophobia can't be measured in economic terms alone. This prejudice erodes the very fabric of our societies, undermining trust, fueling division, and creating a climate of fear and suspicion. When entire communities are marginalized and demonized, it weakens social cohesion and makes it more difficult to address shared challenges. Islamophobia creates barriers to dialogue and understanding, making it harder to build bridges and find common ground. It also fuels extremism and radicalization, as individuals who feel marginalized and alienated may be more susceptible to extremist ideologies. Addressing Islamophobia requires a commitment to building inclusive societies where everyone feels valued and respected. This means challenging prejudice, promoting understanding, and creating opportunities for dialogue and engagement. Section 10. The true cost of Islamophobia. A global reckoning. The true cost of Islamophobia is measured in trillions of dollars lost, millions of lives upended, and the erosion of trust and understanding. This global epidemic of hate has fueled wars, displaced communities, and hindered economic progress. From the battlefields of the Middle East to the streets of our cities, the consequences of Islamophobia are all around us. It's time to move beyond the rhetoric and confront the devastating reality of this prejudice. We can't afford to ignore this issue any longer. The cost is simply too high. Section 11, time to talk. Challenging hate, building bridges. So, what can we do? How do we begin to dismantle this deeply ingrained prejudice? It starts with a conversation, an honest, open, and sometimes uncomfortable dialogue about the impact of Islamophobia. Challenge the stereotypes you encounter. Educate yourself and others about Islam and Muslim cultures. Support organizations working to combat discrimination and promote understanding. Every voice raised against hate makes a difference. Every act of kindness, every bridge built chips away at the wall of prejudice. The time to act is now. Let's rewrite the narrative. Let's build a world where understanding triumphs over fear and where everyone feels safe and respected regardless of their faith.